The late medieval era was the dying gasp of an old world. As the bubonic plague laid waste to Europe, the Indian subcontinent was recovering from its own catastrophe, centuries of relentless Turkic invasion. With its royal houses shattered, talented men of humble origin were finally given an opportunity to prove themselves. In the Deccan region of South India, two rival states emerged, the Vijayanagar Empire and the Bahmani Sultanate. In the midst of conflict, the Vijayanagar Empire flourished, but wealth and power gave rise to arrogance, and arrogance would ultimately bring about its destruction, smashed to pieces in a war it could have prevented. This is the story of the rise and fall of the Vijayanagar Empire. In the early 1330s CE, the Delhi Sultanate found itself on shaky ground. It had overextended into South India, and a string of unpopular policies led to widespread chaos. In the south, political opportunists took advantage of the situation and began to stake new claims on the ashes of their predecessors. Bukka and Harihara, the founders of the Vijayanagar Empire, were not about to be excluded. Sensing an opening, they declared independence from the Delhi Sultanate and waged expansionary wars throughout the southern Deccan. Emboldened by these early victories, the Vijayanagar Empire then launched a campaign against the Madurai Sultanate, gaining control of Tamil country. The empire's domains were now vast, with extensive agricultural, mineral, and maritime resources. Around the same time, Vijayanagar established a permanent embassy in Ming Dynasty China, further legitimizing itself as an imperial power. But success would not always come easy. The Hindu Vijayanagar Empire soon found itself locked in a bloody stalemate with the Muslim Bahmani Sultanate, a rebel kingdom in the northern Deccan that had also freed itself from Delhi's control. Their centuries-long conflict often centered around the highly defensible and resource-rich land between the Tungabhadra and Krishna rivers, the Raichur Doab. When Bahmani Sultan Firoz Shah defeated Vijayanagar in a war over the Doab in 1408 CE, the tribute request was bold to say the least. Firoz was fond of wine, poetry, and women. He not only received 2,000 artist slaves, but also the emperor's daughter as his bride. That's right, the Bahmani Sultan became the son-in-law of the Vijayanagar Emperor. It was about time for some honest self-reflection. When Devaraya II ascended the Vijayanagar throne in 1425 CE, he was keenly aware that his empire should not be having so much trouble with the Bahmanis. Though the Vijayanagar Empire enjoyed a larger economy, land holdings, and military presence, it had been reduced to paying tribute. But why? From the beginning, the Bahmani Sultanate saw potential in the broader network of innovation and expertise that characterized the Islamic Golden Age, from engineering to medicine. The Sultanate sent ships to ports throughout the Muslim world, importing huge numbers of fortune seekers. These immigrants came to be known as Westerners and included soldiers, merchants, and scientists. Immigration swelled the Bahmani Sultanate with talent, creating an elite class of citizens who were ambitious, well-connected, and loyal. Devaraya saw the writing on the wall. Early on, the Vijayanagar Empire had defined itself as a Hindu bastion, but that identity was no longer useful. It would have to remake itself into a more open society in order to reach its full potential. Devaraya began to incorporate Muslims into the apparatus of the state, bringing them into his service and allotting them lands and titles. This was perfect timing. In the Bahmani Sultanate, immigrant Westerners clashed with entrenched local Muslims known as Dakhnis, and expulsions soon followed. Who better to welcome these talented deportees than the Vijayanagar Empire? The empire was reinvigorated, and its capital, today known as Hampi, grew to 250,000 people. Consider the observations of the Persian ambassador, Abdur Razak, who lived in the capital. Devaraya made many books, promulgated many laws. He entertained at court a diverse crowd that included scholars of various faiths, writers, scientists, and many others. The city's inhabitants have no equals in the world, and the eye has never seen a place like it. 7 citadels enclose each other, and within are fields, parks, houses, and bazaars. Walls come alive with carvings depicted with such skill that one would think they are real. The country is well cultivated and fertile, and about 300 good seaports belong to it. The army consists of 1.1 million men and more than 1,000 elephants. In the whole of India, there is no king more absolute than the ruler of Vijayanagar. Culturally, Vijayanagar adopted an eclectic style. Multi-tiered Dravidian buildings were given Persian columns and vaulted arches. Meanwhile, residents wore shawls, caps, and high-necked jackets in the Islamic fashion. But these items were integrated with an updated South Indian dhoti, crisscrossed with girdles and bands. And so the first golden age would be defined by transformation. from a closed state to an imperial powerhouse welcoming people from all walks of life. During this time, the empire grew in stature. It took territories from the Bahmanis and annexed the Reddis. Its fleets also excised tribute on distant maritime kingdoms, Lanka and Pegu included. In 1443 CE, one of Devaraya's princely brothers had just moved into a new palace and invited the emperor's allied nobles and ministers to a celebratory banquet. In truth, the event was a well-disguised attempt to usurp the throne. Due to caste traditions, invitees attended the banquet at different times. This gave the treacherous brother an opportunity to slaughter them in small groups as they were eating. He even hired a musical ensemble to drown out their cries for help. With the slaughter underway, he went to the emperor's chambers to personally deliver the invitation. It just so happened that Devaraya was feeling unwell. As the window of opportunity was closing, his treacherous brother pulled out a dagger and stabbed him multiple times. The usurper rushed to a nearby portico and announced, "I have slain the emperor and his amirs, brahmins, and viziers. Now I am emperor." But Devaraya did not actually die. According to Abdur Razak, the emperor dragged himself to another portico and called out, "I am alive and safe. Seize that wretch." Though Devaraya survived, the political situation was grim. The Bahmanis sensed their neighbors' sudden vulnerability and launched an invasion. After Devaraya's eldest son died in battle, a negotiated settlement soon followed. The downward spiral continued. Devaraya II was succeeded in 1446 CE by his youngest son, who was poorly suited for the throne. This son faced joint invasions by the Bahmanis and the Gajapati of Orissa, which damaged the empire considerably. His reign lasted until 1465 CE, when he reportedly died of a broken heart. When the next emperor was killed by his own son in 1485 CE, the murderous prince passed the throne to an apathetic brother. But instead of administering the state, this newly minted emperor spent his days writing a manual on the art of oral pleasure. Saluva the Hawk Narasimha, a popular Vijayanagar general, watched these developments with disgust. The empire was in tatters. The loss of Goa to the Bahmani Sultanate cut off a critical supply of Middle Eastern horses, and as the Gajapati of Orissa aggressively plundered Vijayanagar territory, many provincial governors realized the weakness of the center and became semi-independent. Narasimha came to believe that the original dynasty must end for the empire to survive, and so he usurped the throne. Thus, the Saluva dynasty was born. But Narasimha died shortly after taking control, and his two young heirs were left in the safekeeping of a trusted friend and advisor. Big mistake. In due time, both sons were killed, and by 1505 CE, the advisor's own son officially launched the third dynasty of the empire, the Tuluva dynasty. Despite its treacherous beginnings, the Tuluva dynasty would see Vijayanagar through another golden age. When Krishnadevaraya ascended the throne in 1509 CE, it must have come as a shock to traditionalists. He was an unlikely emperor, having been born to a lowly concubine, and he raised his own beloved concubine, a dancer by profession, to queenly status. But he had the qualities of a great leader. Krishnadevaraya was relentlessly efficient and accomplished. In fact, he wrote 6 literary works in the Telugu, Kannada, and Sanskrit languages, all while managing an empire. Under his able guidance, the capital grew to 500,000 people, making it the second biggest city in the world after Beijing. The wealth of the empire attracted the attention of many foreigners. Portuguese traveler Domingo Pace noted the presence of large-scale manufactories and advanced irrigation. Of the capital, he wrote, "This is the best provided city in the world. It seems to me as large as Rome and very beautiful to the sight, with broad streets and rows of fine houses. There are groves of trees and gardens. Many aqueducts flow into the middle of the city." Of the emperor, he wrote, "He is a great ruler and a man of much justice. Every morning he anoints himself with sesame oil, covers his loins with a cloth, and takes in his arms great weights of earthenware. Then, taking a sword, he exercises until he has sweated out the oil. Then he wrestles, and finally he mounts a horse and gallops until dawn before attending court." Krishnadevaraya was impressive, no doubt, but what was happening in the northern Deccan? A lot, actually. In the previous century, the Bahmanis had thrived under the guidance of the even-handed regent Mahmud Gawan, called the Prince of Merchants. In 1483 CE, however, a group of jealous ministers faked a seditious letter using a forged signature of Gawan. The Bahmani Sultan was shown this forgery while intoxicated. In a fit of anger, he ordered his regent's execution. But Gawan was the only man who could keep the peace between the increasingly hostile Westerner and Dakhni factions. His death accelerated these divisions and empowered the feuding nobility. By 1490 CE, the Bahmani Sultan was reduced to a prisoner in his own city, and 5 noble lineages emerged with successor states of their own: the Bijapur, Bidar, Golconda, Ahmadnagar, and Berar Sultanates. Krishnadevaraya salivated over the opportunities created by the splintering of the Bahmanis. After he finished thrashing his longtime Hindu enemy, the Gajapati of Orissa, he turned his attention to the new Deccan Sultanates. In 1520 CE, Krishnadevaraya decided to take the Raichur Doab from the Bijapur Sultanate, and so he manufactured a justification for war on the basis that a merchant owed money to Vijayanagar and had taken refuge in Raichur. It was quite a shakedown. Krishnadevaraya arrived at Raichur Fort with an invasion force that included several 100,000 infantry and 27,000 cavalry. Tens of thousands of courtesans were brought along to provide entertainment during the siege. As he did not have the artillery necessary to break the fortifications, Krishnadevaraya concocted an alternative plan. He sent teams of men with pickaxes and crowbars to take apart the walls. This strategy proved effective. Though over 200 side-loaded swivel guns had been installed on the ramparts of the fort, they were placed in such a way that the defenders could not shoot at the pickaxe wielders below. The Bijapur Sultan, Ismail Adil Shah, was forced to cross the Krishna River in order to take on the Vijayanagar armies directly. Ismail crossed the river with 120,000 infantry, 18,000 cavalry, and 150 elephants, thinking that his smaller army would win the day thanks to his artillery advantage, over 900 cannons. Irrationally confident and reportedly drunk, Ismail failed to stagger his cannons and fired everything in a single volley. This allowed the Vijayanagar forces to absorb the barrage and respond with a well-timed cavalry charge. Krishnadevaraya's cavalry swept through the vulnerable artillery lines and sent their enemies fleeing into the river. Bodies piled up and the water turned red with blood. The Bijapur Sultan just barely escaped. Krishnadevaraya called off his men and returned to Raichur to continue the siege. He now had the enemy cannons in his possession, and had also just hired a company of elite Portuguese snipers. These snipers picked off defenders one by one until the fort commander decided to poke his head out. A bullet was immediately delivered to his skull, and a formal surrender soon followed. Ismail sued for peace, but received a hot-tempered response. Krishnadevaraya agreed only on condition that the Sultan kiss his feet. The insult was so shocking that it traveled all the way to the courts of Central Asia. Ismail joked that the only problem was that he could not, as an enemy combatant, enter the empire's lands. As if to give Ismail the opportunity to kiss his feet, Krishnadevaraya brought his armies all the way to Bijapur, but Ismail had fled the city. Feeling supremely powerful, Krishnadevaraya destroyed their capital and left it in ruins. In the early 1500s, an ambitious militarist named Ramaraya was serving the Qutb Shah in Golconda when he decided to switch sides to Vijayanagar. Owing to his bloodline, Ramaraya married Krishnadevaraya's daughter and entrenched himself in the state apparatus. By 1542 CE, he was declared regent of the child emperor in Vijayanagar. Though only a regent, Ramaraya styled himself an emperor and imprisoned the real claimant to the throne. Much of his reign is characterized by meddling in the affairs of the Deccan Sultanates, a strategy that would ultimately backfire. In 1558 CE, Ali Adil Shah of Bijapur was on the brink of war with Hussein Nizam Shah of Ahmadnagar. Ali sought the assistance of Ramaraya and the Qutb Shah of Golconda. The three powers entered into an alliance. In 1559 CE, they traveled north to Ahmadnagar and sieged the fortress city with an enormous allied force. Hussein gave up the fort and chose to engage in guerrilla warfare. In response, Ramaraya and his armies inflicted horrific violence upon the locals, destroying mosques and pillaging the countryside. This show of cruelty upset the Qutb Shah, who backed out of the alliance. Though religious violence was not new, the plundering of temples and mosques was meant to damage the legitimacy of the enemy state. Ramaraya's gleeful and relentless aggression raised new concerns. Despite these concerns, Ali Adil Shah remained with Ramaraya. The campaign was too important to his political interests. By 1561 CE, Hussein sued for peace. Ramaraya agreed to peace only if Hussein gave disputed lands to Bijapur, executed his best general, and ate a betel nut directly out of Ramaraya's hands. Though these demands were outrageous, Hussein understood that he had no choice. He submitted but swore vengeance. Less than a year later, Hussein married his daughter off to the Qutb Shah's son and launched a joint campaign against Ali Adil Shah of Bijapur. Unsurprisingly, Ramaraya offered his assistance. But Ramaraya had become a problematic ally. He not only destroyed mosques and terrorized civilians in enemy territory, but did the same in the lands of Ali Adil Shah. He even went so far as to annex some of Ali's territories. Ramaraya had stabbed the Bijapur Sultanate in the back. Once the war ended, Ali terminated their partnership. By 1564 CE, the leaders of the Deccan Sultanates came to the conclusion that their biggest threat was an aggressive Vijayanagar Empire. A new alliance was struck. For the first and last time, the Sultanates banded together. In early 1565 CE, the Sultanates and their armies met those of the Vijayanagar Empire in an engagement known as the Battle of Talikota. Though Vijayanagar had a numbers advantage, the Sultanates had an artillery advantage. Hussein had imported the talents of an eccentric engineer from the Ottoman Empire. This engineer designed artillery weapons for Hussein, including a 14-foot gun named Maliki-Maidan, based on new Hungarian technology. The gun was so heavy that it had to be pulled by elephants. Let's dive right into the battle. The Sultanates staggered their artillery fire, softening up the Vijayanagar empires and keeping them at a distance until they were ready to clash. Meanwhile, the elderly Ramaraya galloped around, waving his sword and promising to torture his enemies. There are two competing theories for what happened next. One, Hussein filled Maliki Maidan with copper coins and fired the payload at Ramaraya's position. The blast superheated the coins and transformed them into a rain of bullets that killed Ramaraya from a distance. 2. As both sides clashed, Ramaraya was speared off his horse, brought to Hussein, and beheaded on the spot. Some point to the betrayal of two Muslim commanders on the Vijayanagar side as the reason for the battle turning in favor of the Deccan Sultanates. These commanders, known as the Gilani brothers, were not actually from Vijayanagar. They were mercenaries who had just recently served Bijapur. Contemporary traveler accounts indicate that the Gilani brothers were bribed not to take part in the battle. They fled with a few thousand troops. It's unlikely that this had a significant impact on the outcome. The Vijayanagar armies vastly outnumbered those of the Sultanates, an advantage numbering nearly 60,000. What lost the battle for Vijayanagar was the fact that the Deccan Sultanates had equipped their armies with superior crossbow technology, faster Persian horses, and cannons manned by Turkmeni artillery squads, reputedly the best in the world. With the battle lost, the Vijayanagar armies scattered and the victorious sultans marched to the capital. Doom was inevitable. Those who had the means escaped, others were not so lucky. The invaders destroyed Vijayanagar. They plundered its palaces, markets, temples, and homes, murdering and enslaving civilians who had been left behind. In just a few days, one of the most magnificent cities in the world was reduced to a smoldering ruin. The Vijayanagar Empire was broken, its prized lands divided amongst the victors. And though it survived as a minor peripheral kingdom until 1646 CE, the Battle of Talikota delivered the crippling blow.